Welcome back to the TwinSpires Racing Roundtable. I'm Ashley Anderson here with James Scully and Vance Hanson to look back at the Breeders Cup World Championships at Del Mar over the weekend. We're going to talk about what went right and wrong for each of us because accountability is a great thing. And then we'll also talk Pool 1 of the Kentucky Derby Future Wager and our reactions to the betting out of Pool 1. We'll have several more to come, but this was the first pool that we had for that future wager and some interesting insights from that first pool. But we'll start things off with Breeders' Cup and where our predictions went right. To start on a positive note, James, I will begin with you. Where did you get things right at Breeders' Cup?
Well, I wanted to focus upon, I said on last week's roundtable, there were 4 legitimate win contenders that I thought got hurt by the post draw, and none of them could win. And those winners were Copian in the sprint, Nitrogen in the distaff, Fierceness in the Classic,
Yes.
and Rebels Romance in the Breeders' Cup Turf. And Nitrogen and Rebels Romance, both ran well to be second. But I mean, I guarantee you their connections would have liked to see what would have happened if they could have been drawn outside instead of forced out to work out a trip from inside. Copian got shuffled back to 10th early. She got beat less than 2 lengths for second. So that positioning, I thought, really hurt her. And Fierceness was a serious win contender for me going into the draw in the Classic. And once he drew the draw, I was against him. And I thought that it was just it was a great example of how bad that rail post could be, or how difficult it could be to overcome if you weren't a speedball who's going to be showing the way at Del Mar. Because I thought Forever Young had a trouble trip from the rail last year. It was in tight, and it's a long run to the first turn. But in that field, if you can't work your way out, you really run into trouble going into that first turn. And I thought last year, Forever Young, he could never extricate himself from the rail. He was in tight, taking a hold. It took the jockey forever to get him outside. And then he went widest of all and just got going too late and ran third. And sort of a similar trip with Fierceness this year, where once he didn't make the lead from the inside, he had Contrary Thinking and Forever Young basically boxing him in throughout. And he ran I thought a respectable third, but I thought that inside post really hurt him. And in Forever Young, once again, he took advantage of it this year. So I thought that the posts were a big part of it. I will say one other thing I was right about that I didn't talk about to our producers beforehand, but in the juvenile fillies, I was taking a stab against all the chalk, and I wound up being on the 2 last out maiden winners, and one of them Super Corridor won. So I did have the right take on that on Friday, and led to a good day.
Got a good price on that horse.
Yeah.
Vance, what went right for you?
Not a whole lot, to be perfectly honest, but after Sovereignty was scratched in the Classic, I did kind of lean towards Forever Young in there. I was quite bullish on his chances, given how well he had performed in 2 previous runs here in America, in last year's Kentucky Derby and then in last year's Breeders' Cup Classic. I had some concerns with the other 2 main contenders in there, Sierra Leone, whether he would get a fast pace or not. And Fierceness, as James alluded to, I thought the rail draw perhaps wasn't the best thing for him. But Forever Young, demonstrated the class that he showed winning the Saudi Cup against Romantic Warrior earlier this year. And to be fair, and to be honest, I thought the main track was very kind towards speed all weekend. There was only just a couple of winners that came from worse than second after the first call. Forever Young had a terrific trip chasing the rabbit in the Classic, and as you can see, he just fended off a late bid from Sierra Leone. So congratulations to these connections, the well-deserved victory in America's richest race anyway, the Breeders' Cup Classic. A couple of the horses I've mentioned that I faded, was going to fade over the weekend, turned out that those predictions turned out right. I was against Minnie Hawk in the turf, and I was also against She Feels Pretty in the filly and mare turf. I didn't quite land on the winners of those, the long shot winners of those 2 races, but I was right in thinking their chances weren't as high as the bettors were giving them out to be. And one other thing I'll mention about the filly and mare turf, Jazora, morning line favorite, she went off at 9-1. And that had to be one of the biggest bargains in the betting all weekend in the Breeders' Cup. I mean, she ran a clunker in the arc last time for sure, but her form previous to that was very, very solid. And for the bettors to let her go at 9-1 was quite a shock to me.
And I'll so echo that point. I do think that's a great point that Vance made, needs to be pointed out with the way the main track played. I thought it was more fair last year. Obviously, Sierra Leone closed from way far back last year to win the Classic. And I thought by the time the Classic came around, if you liked Sierra Leone, you had to be really worried by how all the winners, at least in these races that were, I mean, the Philly Mare Sprint was like a 7-horse field and such, but in the races with big fields, you weren't having any deep closers winning them, and it held with Forever Young basically stalking the pace in second from the start.
For me, on Friday, I felt like I wasn't hitting the first several Breeders' Cup races. Of course, we had some big long shots in there. The last two went okay. I think it was kind of easy to predict with the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. Aiden O'Brien got his 4th straight win with Justad. But Ted Noffey, who wasn't, well, there were some people that were wrong. Noffey was right on the heels of Brandt for most of the race. And you can see Flavian Pratt, he's gearing down on Brandt here on the far turn. And, well, actually, this is in the stretch. But you could see that John Velasquez didn't really have to ask much until they got into mid-stretch. I thought that's when he really started asking for Ted Noffey, and he was able to run away with it. I don't think he was going to get caught with more distance. The 3 was able to rally late, but I don't think he would have gotten caught. He looks like, to me, the horse that you would put money on in the Derby right now. He's 4 for 4, got his 3rd Grade 1 win, and I thought he was very impressive in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I don't really know. I mean, obviously people want to just take a stand against him and try to beat him. He's a 2-year-old, so you never know what's going to happen. But that was where I was right, and it wasn't hard to be right about Ted Noffey. So I didn't have a lot go right for me either, Vance, especially on Friday and some of those juvenile races. But Ted Noffey was easy to pick out.
I'll tell you that Ted Noffey, I thought he ran terrific, but he did sort of like idle. I mean, he lost focus a little bit in upper stretch.
Yeah.
He got about a length past Brandt, and then all of a sudden he sort of like disengaged a little bit, it seemed to me. And I was really worried that not only Brandt could come back, but that Mr. AP would throw a threaded to him. But once Brandt got like to about a head back of him, he re-engaged, I thought, turned it back on, and was finishing full of run under the wire. So, I mean, that's more maturity thing where he can still grow out of that. And he's clearly the horse to beat for the 2026 Kentucky Derby now, considering the numbers he's been earning and how well he's run in his first 2 starts at 2 turns.
Yeah, I had a 104 Brisnet speed figure. That was the top speed figure among 2-year-olds. No surprise there this past weekend. And we did have 2 scratches, Civil Liberty and Blackout Time. I know some people were on Blackout Time. It was kind of a popular pick with some handicappers, a better price. But I think Ted Noffey would have still beat Blackout Time. They faced each other in the Breeders' Fraternity, and Blackout Time was second to Ted Noffey that day. And I think something similar would have happened. Ted Noffey, I think, would have still done better in this race than Blackout Time had he won. I know that Kenny McPeak's barn is very high on Blackout Time, and there's plenty of time to progress before the first Saturday in May, but I do think in the juvenile, if we had seen Blackout Time, I still think Ted Noffey would have gotten the win.
If Blackout Time's fine, there's no reason why he can't wheel him back for the Kentucky Jockey Club on Thanksgiving weekend. So I'll wait to see if he does show up in that spot.
Going back to the idling, jockey John Velasquez said after the race that Ted Noffey was kind of reacting to the shadows caused by the grandstand. So probably a legitimate excuse for him to lose focus there. But he said once he got past the grandstand, past the grandstand shadows, or so to speak, he re-engaged, and as we saw in the replay, moved on and won quite comfortably.
Well, here's where we have to humble ourselves and talk about what went wrong in the Breeders' Cup. Vance, I'll start things off with you.
Yeah, if you guys got half an hour. I'll focus on a couple of horses I one I liked going into the weekend, and one I tried to fade, and that turned not so good. I was kind of high on Ultimate Love in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies Turf. Thought I would get a good price, but of course that was before the heavy morning line favorite Precise was scratched, and I was still quite surprised that Ultimate Love was wound up being the post time favorite here. I thought she had a great trip along the inside, and this is a video of Notable Speech in the mile. Um, but going back to the Juvenile Phillies Turf, Ultimate Love had a pretty good ground saving trip under John Velasquez. Uh, Around the far turn, we'll see here. Yes, she's in the live oak silks there, the red polka dots. So she was having a ground saving trip until uh, the far turn, turning for home. Then Velasquez switched her out for run. But as we see here, the rail then opens up for Valentina, who cruised to a nice long shot victory here. And Ultimate Love just came up completely flat and empty. I was a bit surprised that she didn't have more oomph in that race. So she's probably a better filly than what she showed on Friday, but I was a bit being an underlay anyway in the pools. And then going back to the mile, Notable Speech was my top pick last year. I was a bit suspicious that he could run back or better that in the mile on Saturday, even despite running a really good prep race in the Woodbine Mile. But he had a great trip here, ground save all the way here, and then he came up with a big explosive kick under Will Buick and proved the best of this race. And comparing the odds, I mean, he was the post time favorite last year and the post time favorite this year. He actually went off at a slightly better price this year than last year, so which I kind of wasn't expecting, but it turned out to be pretty good value, and he dominated that field in the end. So I was wrong again on Notable Speech.
I think we're sticking with the mile right for you as well, James.
Yeah, I really thought the mile was going to have a moderate pace. I just didn't. I mean, I knew that. I thought even that line in the winter. I mean, I thought if any of those internationals was to show speed, he would show speed. Well, then there was also that Kirat on the far outside. I thought that Kirat would get out there potentially, but I just thought the pace would be moderate. And they went 22-2 and 46-3. And Rhetorical, I loved his chances. He was my best bet on the Saturday program. He set the trip, but he just moved into a real hot, even third quarter on the far turn, and took a 1 length lead into the stretch, and then came up 2.5 lengths short in fourth, and or got beat 2 lengths total in fourth, I guess, because he just ran out of gas. And I think that it was because you had this horse One Stripe from who I just totally didn't see whipping along in those early fractions. Made him go a little bit too fast, and really set up the race nicely for Notable Speech, who got into gear later last year and came up short in third. And, I'm not saying he wouldn't have still run a big race if the pace had been more moderate, but I did think it was going to just set up perfectly for my horse sitting just off of it, and it didn't.
That's all you got wrong, James. Just pace scenario. That's pretty good.
Well, I mean, that wasn't the only thing I got wrong. I used a bunch of Europeans on multi-race bets, but the one race I just didn't see a big long shot was Ethical Diamond in the turf from the Euro Challenger. So I left that one off my tickets, and it cost me a little bit.
Yeah. For me in the Classic, where you got it right, Vance, I got it wrong. I was trying to play against Forever Young. I knew with contrary thinking it was probably going to set up well for Sierra Leone, and even then I was still stubborn and didn't want to play Sierra Leone either. I decided to chase a price, and I went with Mindframe, who finished fifth, so that ended up not working out too well for me. But Forever Young, I think I was expecting a short price, knew a lot of people were going to be on that horse, and also the horse had faced similar in the past, including Sierra Leone, including Fierceness in this race last year. Obviously had the rail last year, and this time got post 5, so more favorable for him. But I decided I guess I kind of overlooked him. I just wrote him off saying, he's faced similar company. He hasn't been able to win in the past against these horses. So I'm going to try to beat him here. And chased a big price that did not pay off. The other one, Scylla, actually gave out as a long shot underneath on HRRN, but kicking myself because I let her seconditis keep me from being bold and going for the win bet. Now, Scylla had been racing at sprint distances, including the Filly Mare Sprint last year, but this was her second try back at a route distance. She started her career at route distances. Then she was third in the Spinster, and then going another 9 furlongs for the second straight time after racing at sprint distances for several starts. And you can see she ran away with it. The other thing I was wrong about was I did not think she was going to go to the front and get the early lead. I thought she was going to try to rate off the pace, but Seismic Beauty, she did have that stumble at the start and then was eased. So I don't know if Seismic Beauty had been at full speed, what would have happened, but Scylla clearly got the early lead and was able to just run away with it at 9 furlongs. So very impressive. And I wish I had been more bold in betting her to win and not playing her underneath.
Yeah, that pace, that race, Go for Jen, or excuse me, Jen, broke through the starting gate before the race.
Yeah.
So, and she wound up, I mean, she was pushing it a little bit, but both her and Seismic Beauty, just anybody that was playing them had to be bitterly disappointed because neither one showed up at all, considering how well they had run in their last prep.
It was kind of poetic justice. You see Junior Alvarado there celebrating Bill Mott. They didn't get to have Sovereignty in the Classic. This was their only, well, this was Bill Mott's only runner in the Breeders' Cup this past weekend, and that was his 6th win in the distaff. That was another thing that I thought stood out to me. Still a big price, but Bill Mott had won this race 5 times prior, and that was his 16th Breeders' Cup winner overall. Also, Aidan O'Brien, now the new record holder. He has, what was his final tally?
Aidan O'Brien, he got 21 to set the new record on Friday, but Baffert won 2 races on Saturday, and he tied O'Brien with 21. So
okay.
I thought Baffert, when he won with Splendora, it was really classy what he said about how much he talked on and on about Lucas after that race, about how much it meant to tie him and how much he missed him and everything. It was real classy, and then he came back and passed him and Todd O'Brien and with Nysos in the dirt mile.
Yeah. Well, that'll be another subject later in the year to talk about Nysos and awards and all of that. But we are going to move over to the Kentucky Derby future wager. We had our first pool closed on Friday ahead of the Juvenile. And if you had wagered in pool 1 last year, a $2 bet on Sovereignty, who won the Kentucky Derby, would have gotten you more than $47 a return on that $2 bet. So I don't know if we have the Derby winner in pool 1 yet, but we obviously had some wagering that happened this past weekend. James, where did you think there was value, or what maybe surprised you from pool 1?
Well, last year the winner of the Grade 3 the Grade 3 Street Sense is upped its profile in recent years. 2 Phils won it, and then came back and ran second a couple years ago in the Derby. Or a few years ago in the Derby. And then last year, Sovereignty won the Street Sense and then won the Kentucky Derby. And the thing about Sovereignty was he ran his first 2 races in maiden races and went right to the Street Sense, and he closed last the first in the Street Sense, and he got a career best 93% speed rating. And in this year's Street Sense, last Sunday at Churchill, Incredible rallied last to first for Riley Mott, Bill Mott's son. Bill Mott trained Sovereignty and won the Street Sense the Sunday before, on the 26th of October by a length and a half. He got a 93 speed rating after running his first 2 races in maiden races. So I thought it was interesting because this Incredible has a real stamina-laced female family. If he runs those bloodlines, these longer races next spring will be right up his alley. So just a real encouraging win. And anybody betting on him in pool 1 got 34-1. So I thought he offered some value in there. I agree with some of y'all's points about some horses being overbet, but I wanted to point out one that I thought offered some value. And we had mentioned him before, Incredible winning the Grade 3 Street Sense for Raleigh Mott.
Vance, what were your thoughts, early takeaways from pool 1?
Well, one of the intriguing things about pool 1 is that it closes before a big race, which is not the case usually when we get into the later pools past the new year. But so obviously the 2 big favorites coming when the pool closed were Ted Nafi and Brandt was, I think, closed about 14-1, second individual choice, I believe. And if you watch the Juvenile, Brandt did run a courageous race, setting a strong pace, and then re-rallying a little bit in the stretch. But you kind of walked away from it thinking this horse probably isn't going to want a mile and a quarter. So those that took 14 to 1 on him in the Kentucky Derby future wager might be ruining the fact that they took too small of a price. But this is a very talented horse still. He could turn out to be a pretty good horse up to a mile and a 16th, mile and an eighth even, but mile and a quarter, I think he looked a little shaky after watching him perform in the juvenile. And then one horse I thought was intriguing at a price in the pool, and that would be Englishman, who closed at 40 to 1. He was a sharp maiden winner on debut back at the September meet at Churchill. You see here, I think it was a 7 furlong race, and he just blows the doors off this field at the very end. He's by Maxfield, so he's eligible to very much stretch out. Trained by Cherie DeVoe, who's a very talented trainer. Hasn't had a major contender for the Derby yet, but that's undoubtedly in her future to come. This horse was training regularly until mid-October. Last I checked, he hadn't posted a work since October 17th, I believe. I don't know if he's had a setback or not, but still, he's one to keep an eye on as we approach the winter time.
For me, well, I don't know if we mentioned Ted Noffey was the top individual choice at 10 to 1. That was no surprise. Obviously, as you mentioned, Vance, this was the betting closed before the juvenile, so I'm sure people that took the money on Ted Noffey were happy in hindsight that they got him as opposed to Brandt. But our third individual choice was Blackout Time, who scratched from that race, the juvenile. And then Napoleon Solo to me was a little bit of surprise. Fifth individual betting choice, 27 to 1 for Chad Summers. This was a horse that won the Champagne by more than 5 lengths. And my big question is the pedigree. This is a horse by Liam's Map. So is this horse really going to stretch out and go the distance of the Derby? The horse could have gone to the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, and then Chad Summers said that after he ran 6 furlongs in 107.88, which was just shy of a 26-year-old track record for 6 furlongs in the Champagne, they said he ran too fast. They didn't want to put him in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile and just point toward a 3-year-old campaign. The horse could be talented, but have we had a Liam's Map win the Derby yet? I don't think we have. And I just don't know if this horse long-term is going to be running classic distances. So I wouldn't want to take 27 to 1 right now on a horse that I have pedigree questions. So I was just a little surprised that so many people bet that horse, that it was the 5th individual choice. And then, of course, the 4th individual choice is Further Ado, the 20-length winner for Brad Cox. Took 3 tries to break his maiden, but won by 20 lengths. That's obviously impressive, but I don't like putting a lot of weight in those big maiden wins either, because we've seen plenty that don't really do anything after that, too.
He's going to be targeting the Kentucky Jockey Club for Cox. I was hoping Englishman would make that race, but we'll see if he can get back to the work tab in time. But, yeah, I agree with the Napoleon Solo. It's some questions to still answer at 2 turns for that colt. And there's never been a Liam's Map that was a serious Derby contender. I mean, Burnham Square ran 6th this year.
Yeah, that's true.
You're not going to find a lot of Liam's Maps that are serious Derby Triple Crown race contenders.
Well, our next future wager is November 27th through the 30th. That'll be Pool 2, and that's Thanksgiving weekend. So if you didn't get in on Pool 1, or if you did and still want to wager on Pool 2, there are probably going to be more horses in that one that we haven't seen in Pool 1. So watch out for that at KentuckyDerby.com, and TwinSpires will have that wagering as well. And we will have a total of 6 going through April. So be on the lookout for that. And we also have that Sire future wager that's part of Pool 2, I believe. Do you get in on that one, James? The Sire wager?
I always do. I like doing the Sire wager. $10 stocking gifts for my
that's right.
relatives. Yeah.
That's right. And Pool 5 will have the Kentucky Oaks future wager. So a lot coming up. And then, of course, we're going to have many more prep races to help you decide who you should wager on in those future wagers. Vance, did you put any money down on Pool 1?
I did not this time. I'm going to take. I wanted to see the juvenile first, and then I'll be taking a closer look at Pool 2.
Yeah, I wanted to wait as well. I think right now, like I said, Ted Noffy's the only one that's really visually impressed me, and I don't want to put money on someone that's going to take all the money right now in these pools. So I will wait for pool 2 or pool 3. We'll see. But that is all the time we have today for the Racing Roundtable. We will be back next Tuesday to recap more stakes action and Churchill Downs action, and we will see you next time.